All right. I think we're live. I'll be honest. I have no idea. But that's what we're going with. Anyways, Judd'z Budz, episode 71. As always, your host, Spoke Z, not joined by my good buddy, Mr. At State of Hoppy, this week. He is doing cool shit on a golf course today. So just me today. Did absolutely zero planning for this episode. So just like old times, it's been a very long time since I did one of these by myself. So should be interesting. I cannot get the trees to get out of my face. Anyways, how's everyone doing? Great. Good talk. Like I said, gonna just be me today. Probably gonna be a quick one. I put a tweet out asking for questions. I've got a grand total of 2. Probably because I remembered to do it about 30 minutes ago, if that, probably less. So, this is feeling very nostalgic. This is feeling like old time Judd'z Budz, but it was just me doing this. So it should be interesting. Like I said, probably going to be quick. Got a couple things that we'll talk about, and then we'll probably just do draft stuff, and then I'll answer the grand total of 2 questions that we've got from the Twitter account. So without further ado, why don't we just dive right into it? The first thing, since we last talked, obviously the buyout window, I don't remember if it was open last time we did one of these, but we got a buyout. Pretty fucking big one. Oliver Ekman-Larsson. I told Isha that I would talk about it because he decided to make that the thumbnail of this video. So he's bought out by Vancouver, and it's quite shocking because, well, it is and it isn't, right? Like, I mean, the guy just isn't an $8 million player. He's not a $6 million player. He's not a $4 million player anymore. But man, that fucking cap hit, that penalty for this buyout is something else. So let me pull it up here. They are on the hook now for, oh Jesus, for through the 2030-31, I believe. Yes, the 31 season, which doesn't even sound like a fucking real year, by the way. And I mean, it's not quite on the Minnesota Wild Sota Pod buyout level, but I mean, that hurts. But you know what? It doesn't make sense from, the penalty standpoint, but Jesus Christ, I think that had to go. That had to end. That was just a brutal, couple of years there. And it just had to happen. So that being said, I mean, the dude, Ron says, I think he's cooked. I don't know if I'd go as far to say cooked. I mean, the guy's 31 years old. He still skates pretty well. He's just, I'll be curious to see who's going to take us. He's going to make money. He's going to get signed, right? Like, he's going to go somewhere. And, I assume he'd sign like a 1-year deal somewhere that he wants to go. A 1-year deal, reboost the value because he's going to, probably sign again. I think he can still play, but, maybe when he's getting against lesser competition, not going up against top lines, really not being relied on essentially as a defenseman, I think he can still give you some kind of value, right? So, I mean, I'll be curious to see who takes a swing on him because, I mean, if you can get him for 1 year, 1-2 million, I don't know why you wouldn't. He's a dude that's played as long as he has in the NHL, and he's had some really good years. And obviously, again, he can still skate, and there's still a little bit of offense in there, and it's not all just like on the power play. As a matter of fact, he's not exactly the best power play player anymore anyways. So, yeah, I mean, I'll be curious to see. I think if you're a team that's cap strapped, that you're, pushing for a playoff spot and looking to make a deep run in the playoffs, and you need depth on that back end like we saw, I think that's a decent gamble to make. It seems like a pretty, low risk, mid to maybe high reward swing. So, since this is a Minnesota Wild prospect podcast, so I don't think this makes a whole lot of sense for the Minnesota Wild, obviously, because I don't really think they've got any money to really throw around until they get their own shit sorted out. But I mean, yeah, I think for any team who looks at, their back end, who needs to add someone that can play decent minutes, can give you something offensively, and maybe isn't like a complete crater on his own end. Again, I think that's a pretty intriguing. I bet he'll have his pick of teams too. I think there are going to be plenty of teams calling his name, so we'll see what happens. But it'll be interesting. So Oliver Ekman-Larsson bought the fuck out. By the way, I used to, like, for fun, find the most like devastating contracts in the NHL. I'll just go on like Cap Friendly and buy them out to see what it looked like. And holy shit, a couple of years ago, this was like the most buyout proof contract of all time. Like, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago I did it, and it was paying out to like just years at a ridiculous cap hit. At one point, the cap hit was just like the exact same, and it was just ridiculous. So, hey, you know what? Sucks for Arizona. They get to be on the hook. They're going to be paying this dude, even though when they're not the Arizona Coyotes anymore. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see where he goes, though. That's a crazy buyout. I can't believe it actually fucking happened, but Jesus. I hope he ends up somewhere and gets to play, as many minutes as he should be playing and not fucking just getting absolutely carved by the fan base wherever he goes. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with Oliver Ekman-Larsson. I hope you're happy, Isha. I actually did bring him up, and I remember to do it right off the hop. So there you go. I'm not used to doing this by myself for so long. I'm like having to do the fucking timestamps, and this is going to drive me nuts. I will forget about halfway through here, especially as these start going back. But anyways, this one we could do a whole fucking show about. What a brutal transition. But are the Calgary Flames gonna have to like relocate before the Arizona Coyotes do? Holy shit, what the fuck is going on? The past 24 hours, it's just like, hey, every single established player that's pretty good that we have on our roster that has like 1 year left on their contracts, yeah, they all have absolutely zero interest in coming back. So let me pull up. I get it because Sarah Volley's just been like rattling off these fucking these tweets about the guys that are just like, yeah, no, I'm out of here. First one that we saw the news about was Elias Lindholm. Now that we saw that, like, I think last week, 2 weeks ago. Actually, I really think that's probably been out there for a while now. I mean, they threw an 8-year bag at him and he said, no, I'm good. Word for word, Frank Saravalli 8 hours ago. Update: Calgary recently made a big pitch, rolled out the red carpet (parentheses dollars). Thank you, Frank. To re-sign center Elias Lindholm. Calgary is waiting on a response from Lindholm and have not been given a definitive answer yet, but general league speculation is he's leaning towards not re-signing with Calgary. That is horrendous for them. Everyone is just out. They actually had their 2 best players last year say, peace, smell you later, I'm gone. No, not even coming back. They gassed Sutter, and now even more players want to leave. I don't know how the fuck that, like, the introductory meetings went with Conroy, because he's been there for a while. He's just the GM now, but they were like, you know what, this actually seems worse than it was before. My buddy Corey Snyder, he just tweeted out recently, Sutter refused to play young prospects, so now they have to play the entire Wrangler squad, their AHL team. They're all going to make the team next year because everyone's fucking leaving. So, but Lindholm, I mean, if you're Calgary, you have to move him now. If he's giving you a definitive no, then he's got to go. You have to. I mean, a bunch of dudes got to go then. Because look at this. Followed up. Same thing with Hanifin. It clearly indicated that he does not plan to sign an extension on Calgary. Doesn't necessarily guarantee a trade, but Calgary has an answer on where he stands. So that's definitive. Then Saravalli follows that up about 25 minutes later. Bit of a surprise, told Michael Backlund is also leaning toward not re-signing in Calgary. That's crazy to me. That dude's played 900 games in that fucking organization. He's like been kind of a perennial like Selke snub forever. That dude's solid. And I mean, the offense has popped off and on lately, the last few years. He's a good fucking player, man. I mean, like, the age doesn't really, that's going to limit some teams, obviously, but that dude's been able to play for a long time. He's one of the best defensive forwards in hockey, has been for a while. And And that's gotta hurt to see that dude who, again, he's been there for 900 fucking games, is also planning on not re-signing there. I mean, that's 15 years? He says he's out. And the last one, which really seems like a doozy, Frank Saravalli 2 hours ago, not to throw another log onto the fire for the Flames. Well done. But the potential exodus continues. I'm told Tyler Toffoli also plans on not re-signing in Calgary. Tyler Toffoli just comes off that monster year, his career year. And he not only, Friedman followed up shortly, or just a few minutes ago, Elliot Friedman says that not only is he planning on not re-signing, that dude's asking for a trade. So you lost Gaudreau, you lost Tkachuk last year. You bring in a guy like Huberdeau, who really just did not have a good year at all. At least he signed, and he really can't go anywhere. And probably, even if he wanted to, I don't know who's going to, sign up for $80 million of that for another fucking 8 years. Uyghur is Uyghur. There was rumors that they were even considering trading him. I can't imagine that was real last year. But he's, there's been rumors there, but, I think he'll have a better year. I think he was off and on last year. Not the best, not the worst year, but so you lose those two guys last year. Now you're looking at Toffoli, Backlund, Lindholm, Hannafin. I mean, what the fuck is going on? What is going on in Calgary? They just got approved for the new arena. You'd think that might entice some guys to stay. They just gassed Sutter, which means like you can actually come to the rink with a smile on your face and you won't get like shot in the head. You'd think they'd be pumped about this season because, I mean, that team is a team that you should expect probably is going to make the playoffs. And this year was a huge outlier, obviously. What the fuck is going on? And if you're Calgary, are you looking at this now and saying, well, we better fucking do this before the draft, which is in a week? So, yes, that's right, Josh. Atlanta Flames coming in hot. That's right. Maybe they'll relocate. So, again, do they relocate before the Arizona Coyotes do at this point? Because they literally can't get anybody to fucking sign there or, well, sign and stay. I mean, they're looking at all of their guys on this roster next year being like 31 and older, like every single one of them. So, I have no idea what's going on in Calgary, but I mean, the hits just keep coming. I have no idea. It makes no sense to me. I'll be curious to see how many deals actually happen, if any, before the draft, which is literally in 6 days. So this could be a very interesting weekend. But there you go. The Calgary Flames, they're losing everybody. No one wants to come back. Maybe they just love Daryl. Maybe they love Daryl Sutter so much, and they just can't play without him. We've all been duped. But Calgary Flames, mass exodus. So that means they will play young players because they'll have no choice to, because it's the only guys they'll have left. But, man, oh, God, Elias Lindholm, I love that guy. It's a risky, if you want to give him 8 years, it's risky with that age, but that dude is a stud. And Backlund, again, he's such a good player. Such an underrated player. He's an actual good answer when people are like, who's the most underrated player in the NHL? I really hate that fucking argument because someone just picks like a guy that's never been nominated for a Hart Trophy and he's having like a monster year like that last year in Florida. People like, I've been saying it forever. Jonathan Huberdeau is one of the most underrated players in the NHL. It's like, fuck off, dude. No one's ever said that. Everyone's always like giving him his flowers because he's nasty. He just plays in Florida, so no one really gives a shit. Same thing with Barkov before. It was unbelievable. I hate that argument. Or I hate that debate. It drives me nuts. But Backlund is an actual good answer when people talk about not the most underrated maybe, but just like an overall underrated player in the NHL. Backlund is a very good answer, I think, because again, that dude's been a perennial, not like Selke winning snub, but like at least for a nomination. You know what I mean? He's such a good player. That's crazy. That's the one that actually kind of shocks me the most of anyone, because I mean, that guy's been there forever. He's been there for 15 fucking years, 900 games. Crazy. So we'll see if anyone takes a big swing on him, because that guy can play. Well, they all can fucking play. Toffoli's had a career year. He's bouncing too. This is nuts. What the fuck is going on in Calgary? What's in the water? Maybe they're all leaving because they won't be in the Saddle Dome much longer. Maybe they just love it so much. Jesus. So there you go. As Joshua said, Atlanta Flames coming in hot. Calgary Flames have to relocate, and they will to Atlanta. Oh my God. And they will to Atlanta. Atlanta hockey's back. All right. moving on. I have to fucking do the timestamps. This is driving me insane. Oh, and I dropped the pen anyway. No more timestamps. Sorry, Isha. All right. I'm really not used to doing this by myself, dude. I don't have Hoppy to like keep me on the rails. I'm about to like look out the window and forget I'm doing a podcast, just like old times. I don't have anyone to go back and forth with. I don't have anyone to go over like movie. Maybe I should have just printed out a what's it called? The script of some Paul Rudd movie and just gone the entire thing. God, Jesus. All right. Anyways, we gotta move on. Last thing, real quick, before we just dive into the draft stuff. Well, actually, that's not true. We'll talk a couple of Minnesota Wild related things, prospect things, and then we'll go into the draft. Bob McKenzie dropped his latest, I think it was a top 50. No, he did top 100 or 96. 96. So he did the first 3 rounds. Thank you, Sean Cosgrove. Look at us. Who would have thought? Thank you, Sean. That was big. We need it. We need it. We needed that. All right. Now we got the juice. Let's have the rest of this beer. And we'll get another one because I have a fridge right next to my computer. Weird. Thank you. Keep the change. But yeah, Bob McKenzie released his top 96 of the first couple rounds there, almost full 3 rounds. And again, Bob McKenzie's rankings tend to like reflect pretty closely how things end up shaking out. So it's actually pretty interesting. So there's a couple that I want to bring up. But before we do that, last thing, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but the Hockey Hall of Fame, the most recent class has been announced, and there's some big time names, man. Let's pull it up here. Goaltender Mike Vernon, forward Pierre Turgeon. By the way, I don't know how, but sometimes I forget about Turgeon's numbers. They're fucking insane. He was unbelievable. Good for him. Let's see. Canadian women's gold medal and captain Caroline Ouellette. I never know how to say their fucking names. Whatever. First ballot, Henrik. Big Hank, the most handsome man of all time. What a man rocket. Gets right in there. Tom Barrasso, which is also very funny when you think about goaltending because how far the positions come. Like, he was winning, like, what was it? He was like, I think he won the Calder when he was like fresh out of high school, and his save percentage was like 889. How far goaltending's come. Pierre Lacroix, well deserved Pierre Lacroix, and Kenny Hitchcock. I actually did not see that coming. I mean, he's been a coach for fucking however games he's coached. That's a crazy amount of time. He's won a cup. I actually didn't see this one coming. I'll be honest with you, but he's in as a builder. So there you go. Same thing with Pierre Lacroix. But there you go. So that's the most recent class. Shout out Hank, first ballot. It's just because he's good looking, eh? Just a good looking dude, gets right in. So there you go. If you want to be in the Hockey Hall of Fame, be like pretty good at hockey, just be hot, and then you're in. You're in the Hall of Fame. So there you go. Most recent class. Tom Barrasso. I don't think we'll ever see a goalie do that again. Literally fresh out of like fucking high school, step into the NHL, win the Calder, win a couple cups. Attaboy, Tommy. But all right. That's it for the Hall of Fame talk. That is the whole thing. And actually, since I got legitimately like, actually, no, I got one extra question in the Twitter thing. Twitter questions. So we'll actually go through the chat too. If people are going to throw in there some questions in there, we'll go through there. How many times can I say there? Jesus, this really is like old times. This is unbelievable. Oh, it's almost nostalgic and fun, but it's nostalgic and terrible. I don't know how I did this every fucking week for however long I did until I started skipping. I'm sorry, Isha. My bad. I'm not skipping this week, though, baby. All right, moving on. Fucking A. Just a couple things with Minnesota Wild Prospects pool related. We continue to see if anything happens with Calen Addison. It's, again, I think everyone's pretty, at this point, just accepting. Too bad Hoppy's not here to weigh in on this. I don't give him his fucking 30 minutes of Calen Addison or Pittsburgh Penguins talk. We'll see if they're going to move him, I would assume they're wanting to do so before the draft. You know, like, I'm assuming if they really are planning on moving this dude, even if it's I don't think you're getting a first round pick, obviously. And I mean, I think I said last week too that, I personally wouldn't move Addison if it's just for picks. But at this point, I also now sit back as I think about it and like, it's not going to be for a player. They can't add anyone. They don't have to re-sign their own guys. I mean, fuck, if they want to bring him back, they don't want to trade him. They have to re-sign him. So he's part of that equation too. But I bet you they would want, if he's included some kind of package, part of that package is probably fucking draft picks, and probably this draft. Even though there are some studs in next year's draft too. I can't wait to dive into that as the coming months happen. But I would assume, even if it's not just for picks, but I would assume they would really want to get at least one or two, something in 2023. I don't really know what his value is at this point. I mean, he's a young right shot D. He's proven he can produce on the power play, which there are a lot of teams, aka the Minnesota Wild, I'm sure would love that. And by the way, the Minnesota Wild don't exactly have another guy on that. They have the great defensive prospect pool. They don't really have, in terms of defensemen, guys that are going to be able to run a power play quite as well as Addison. I think Lambos can do it. We've seen him do it in the WHL. I don't think he necessarily does it, though, to the same degree as Addison. I think, Lambos, for me, probably just how I've watched him develop the last couple of years. A really good, maybe like a second power play guy, a really good one. But Addison's pretty advanced in how well he runs that thing. And I mean, we saw the immediate returns last year when, he started off the season and they had him there. He was, for the first 2 months of the season, he's right up there in rookie scoring. And then, he did one bad thing. Well, actually, he did about 700 bad things in his own zone. And that was it for him. And it did not help that his third shift after being scratched for a year and a half, he got burned, just toasted at these. I forget which game that was. I think it was the Blackhawks, which is even worse. Obviously didn't help himself there, but I really don't. I really wish they wouldn't fucking trade this dude, but it does seem like it is inevitable at this point. But God, if they really are reserved to it, again, I would think that they would at least want to get one pick from this draft in return, or a draft pick from this year's draft in return. But we'll see what happens. So who knows? Maybe by this upcoming Wednesday, the 28th, he is moved somewhere, which would suck. But hopefully, the package be good enough where you're getting Judd Brackett at least one more piece to work with here in this draft. But we'll see. But also Minnesota Wild prospect pool related, Marco Rossi is going to be here I think he actually already is here. He's going to be staying in Minnesota this year. I love that. That's it doesn't surprise me at all because that's kind of his makeup. And I don't think, even if he did go back to Austria this summer, it's not like he would have been, less dedicated to training or whatever. But I love that he's going to be staying here to focus on training because that's a guy that I'm sure, he tried to go dark on social media so he didn't have to, deal with all the pressure. But a kid like him, as competitive as he is, it's guaranteed that, he heard all the noise. He heard the chatter, and I'm sure it pissed him off. And, again, we said this the entire year. Once he went down to Iowa, he did exactly what they wanted him to do. He played how he wanted him to play. He had that fuck you in his game, like Billy Guerin said. I tweeted out a couple of clips, some of the goals he was scoring, some of the assists he had. It was him out muscling dudes in front of the net or along the wall that were, 4 or 5 inches and 20 to 30 pounds heavier than he is. And he outworked him. And now he's going to be here this summer to focus on training because he wants to make the Wild roster out of camp next year. He wants to play a big part. He does not want to be stuck on that fourth line, getting 8-9 minutes a night. So Marco Rossi staying in Minnesota this summer. I love that. Good for him. And I think it'll pay off for him because he's a beauty. And then last thing, this isn't really Minnesota Wild prospect pool related, but Matt fucking Boldy's gonna go play in the PGA Tour real quick. What can't this fucking dude do? I gotta pull up the exact wording because I will fuck it up. Here we go. Pretty cool Matt Boldy news. Players always saying he's an exceptional golfer. He actually might be the best golfer in the NHL, but Minnesota Wild star Matt Boldy has accepted a sponsor's exemption to play the PGA Tour Canada CRMC Championship presented by Gertens at Cragen's Legacy Courses here on August 28th through September 3rd. He's fucking unbelievable. Oh, by the way, Boldy also staying in Minnesota this summer. I can't remember if I was talking to someone who said what his actual handicap is, but I mean, the dude, well, obviously he's decent. Pretty good. But Matt Boldy, I don't even care if that's like the real tour. I'm just gonna say he's a PGA Tour golfer that also plays hockey at this point. That's unbelievable. This fucking kid. He's only like imagine being that good at literally anything, or well, I mean, half as good at literally anything as Matt Boldy is at like having cool hair, golfing, and hockey. That's got to be nice. So shout out Matt Boldy. He's gonna go play golf. PGA Tour player who also plays hockey in the NHL in his off time. So Matt Boldy, PGA Tour star. Matt, pride of Millis, Massachusetts, Boldy. Timestamp again. This is driving me nuts, dude. All right. Now moving on. Let's go to the real stuff. The things that I can actually talk about with, well, that's not true. I was going to say without sounding like a complete idiot and like I'm making shit up. That's realistically, it doesn't matter what we talk about. That's what it sounds like all the time. NHL draft. We are finally less than a week out from the 2023 NHL draft. We've heard forever how good it is. I've talked about it, how good this draft class is. It is absolutely insane. It's loaded. There's probably 4 or 5 kids in this draft class that in any other year would be challenging for first overall. It's right there with the 15 draft. So it's really exciting. And today, Bobby McKenzie from TSN, he posted his list, his top, 96, I think I said. His top 96. What was it? Yes, 96. So he posted a mock first 3 rounds. And again, Bob McKenzie, usually, his list is very reflective because he gets quite literally all of his info from scouts, from teams, from NHL people. So, usually what he puts out there ends up being pretty close to what actually happens and how it unfolds. So real quick, I'm not going to go through like all 96 picks, but a couple things I do feel are worthy mentioning. So real quick, let's run through the top 10. He's got Bedard at 1, not a surprise. Fantilli at 2, not a surprise. Carlson at 3. Depending on who you ask the next 3 or 4, maybe it's a surprise for you. He's got Will Smith at 4, Matvei Michkov at 5, which, Jesus Christ, I can't handle if he goes 5th to Montreal. I really can't do that. Ryan Leonard at 6, Dvorsky at 7, David Reinbacher at 8, Zach Benson at 9, and Gabe Perreault at 10. So first things first that we got to talk about real quick, and that one is is Will Smith going before Matvei Michkov? Listen, both studs. You got Will Smith, he plays the premium position. He plays center. Whether he turns out to be a center in the NHL, we'll see. One of the most entertaining players in the draft to watch. The plays he's able to make. I had a friend, one of my buddies in our scouting outlet there, Smart with an R. You pronounce the R, it's not Smat. Scouting. They look obviously very different, but when he's on and he's making the plays, he looks like Tage Thompson. You know what I mean? Like just some highlight reel plays almost every single time he touches the puck. He played on that ridiculous line alongside Ryan Leonard and Gabe Perreault, all headed to BC. So it's going to be interesting because they've played together for a couple of years and they are going to play together again for another couple of years at least. Will Smith, for me, I'd probably put him behind Michkov because all things being equal, if the Russia thing wasn't real or wasn't happening and he wasn't signed through 2026, he's probably challenging first overall. I think Bedard probably either way created some separation anyways this year, but that's a guy that would be right there with him in terms of pure talent. The ceiling, it's right there. He looks like some kind of version of like a Patrick Kane. Like the plays he can make, the shot is a joke. Again, I've talked about it before. He can shoot any which way. He creates his own scoring chances. The playmaking even as well is also, come a long way this year for him. And I thought actually, even the defensive game was vastly improved by the end of this season. So that's really like the first one where you're sitting there a little bit surprised. Again, you want to say that you are surprised, but you're probably not, just because this isn't because, the playing, but you're not surprised probably just because, again, he's signed, he's in Russia. Like, it's going to be a couple of years before anyone is able to bring him over. Which really, again, part of that for me is why it makes so much sense for San Jose to do it. But at 4, God, I've really been getting anxiety already thinking about Michkov adding to that prospect pool in the Canadian system. But anyways, we'll see what happens there. But that's the first one that kind of jumps out at you. Will Smith over Matvei Michkov, although I do love Will Smith. Michkov is Michkov, dude. Like, this kid's unbelievable. The next one after that for me, Zach Benson being at 9. Part of me says, hey, that's great. The NHL scouts and teams are telling him that, no, this kid is a top 10 pick. I don't give a fuck if he's 5'9". Don't care if he actually ends up being a center in the NHL. He actually has him listed as a left wing. I've said it once. I've said it a million times. Zach Benson is probably the smartest player in this draft. He's been the best player on the Winnipeg Ice, one of the best teams in the Canadian Hockey League, in the CHL, WHL, RIP Winnipeg Ice, by the way. They are now moving to Washington. He's been the best player on that team for 2 years now. And he was driving the line with Matt Savoy, Connor Geekie, when they were playing together. 2 guys that went top 12 last year. I think Geekie went whatever. At least top 15 either way. Both of those dudes last year, top 15 picks. And guess who was the best player on that line when he was playing with them? Zach Benson, who was a -1, draft -1. This year, once again, same thing. Every time that he's put on a new line, that line instantly becomes the best line on that team. And that's one of the best teams in the WHL. So for me, I probably got him. Like, that would be my guy at 5 after Carlson and Smith. Nope, that's not true. Carlson and Michkov. I don't care about the size. It's not going to be a problem. Usually, you look at an underage or an undersized kid and you say, well, you better be a really good skater. That's not at all the case with Benson. It's actually probably the worst part of his game is the skating, but it doesn't matter with him. Like, he's so smart. He defends unbelievably well. He was the best penalty killer in the WHL this season, by the way, as a draft eligible. I think he was second or third in shorthanded goals. Like, all he does is create offense. All he does is affect the game at a 200-foot level. Like, I'm a big Zach Benson guy. So part of me says, hey, it's great that, it sounds like maybe the NHL sentiment is that he is a top 10 pick, even though he's 5'9", 3/4, which I love the exact measurements. Because we were seeing other people mock him at, 16, 17, which is just fucking insane to me. You cannot let him fall that far. That's a guy, if you're Minnesota at pick number 21, if he's sitting there at 17, I'm doing whatever I need to do to move up. It would also drive the fan base nuts because there are so many people, and it's probably partly my fault too, where I say I would like to see them draft a big center because it's something they don't necessarily have in their pipeline. It would drive everyone nuts that they get another guy that's 5'9", 5'10". But he's that good. Like, he is a stud. He's a top 5 pick for me. At the very least, top 10. So again, part of me says, yay, top 10. That's what the industry feels. That's what the NHL scouts, the NHL executives feel. I love that about him. And I love that about, the NHL saying, hey, yeah, he's small, but it's fine. Another part of me says, I would take him way before I would take David Reinbacher, who is Bob McKenzie's and definitely this year's first defenseman off the board. I would definitely take him before Dalibor Dvorsky. I love Dvorsky. And I think I would still probably definitely take him before Leonard or Will Smith. So part of me says it's too low, but again, I'm not going to complain with him being at 9 overall. Gabe Perreault's the big climber here. So Gabe Perreault, he's got him at 10th overall. This is a guy that was probably late first, coming into the season, and he's really blossomed into like just an elite playmaker. He's got the NHL level shot. He's not a good skater, and it's not exactly correctable, but that's okay. That'll really be the big challenge with him if he can make that offense translate in the NHL. The skating's going to get in his way, and then he's going to be able to keep up with the plays. He's going to be able to do what he does, being a step behind. I think he's smart enough and good enough. And again, I think he's able to affect the game offensively in so many ways that he should be able to overcome that to an extent. And he's one of the more creative players in the draft. He's a very good playmaker. He's got a great shot. Defense is a work in progress, but he works fucking really hard. So good for him for getting a top 10 look here from Bobby Mack. Little high for me, but I can totally understand it. Like, there's a legit super high ceiling with him. So Gabe Perreault. And again, like that, the Boston College line from the USN TDP, Smith, Leonard, Perreault staying together at BC, and apparently Bobby McKenzie's mock first top 10 picks. Next 10 picks, he's got Matthew Wood at 11. Big dude at a UConn, was one of the top scorers for a freshman. He's unbelievable. He's 6'4", 200 pounds, plays hard, sniper, really fun to watch. He's got him at 11, Colby Barlow at 12, who I am actually probably expecting to go in the top 10 before. Maybe I would assume that they're going to be NHL teams talk themselves into taking Colby Barlow before they take Zach Benson, just because he's big. He's like 6'1", 6'2". He just looks like an NHL player. He's got one of the best shots in the draft too. If he didn't get hurt, he would have put up 50 to 60 goals this year in the OHL. He's really good, but not exactly the greatest playmaker in the world. Skating's good, but he just kind of just makes it work. So I'll be curious to see what happens with him when he does go to the NHL. But then he's got Oliver Moore at 13, Axel Sandin Pellikka at 14, Braden Yeager at 15, Nate Danielson 16, Sam Honzik at 17, Otto Stenberg at 18, Dmitry Simashev at 19, which is probably the lowest I've seen him. And then Tom Willander, my guy. You've heard me talk about him before. Tom Willander at number 20. This is where it really gets interesting, these 10 picks, because, again, I just said it, Colby Barlow, it just seems like he's going to be a slam dunk, like, for sure, top 10 pick, because he's got the size, he plays like an NHL player, he's got great offense in terms of like the shot anyways. I don't know how translatable it is, so I wouldn't take him top 10, but I totally get it. A guy that I do think will go top 10, just based on, I would expect a flirt with top 10, is a Nate Danielson. I'm surprised he actually put him at 16, because I'm just seeing so many people talk about him in the top 10. I love Nate Danielson. I do think he's a stud, really good playmaker. He's got a real good shot. He's got two-way capability. He's got the size. Skating's got a way to go, but that's fine. It's not like uncorrectable or whatever. I've seen a lot of people say that he's going to go top 10, so that's interesting to me. Braden Yeager had really just an off year this year. In Moose Jaw, but he's a no shit sniper. He should be able to produce in the NHL, if nothing else, from the goal scoring. He's gonna be an absolute weapon on whatever power play he ends up. So, that was a guy that was challenging for top 8 at this time last year. When we were coming into this year's draft, that was a guy that was going to be there challenging the top guys. So that's interesting. Also interesting that he's got Pellikka at 14, because I see a lot of NHL executives trying to talk themselves out of taking him too high because he's 5'11" and not 6 feet. Dynamic skating, really fun to watch. Just highlight real level stuff from the back end. Just such an awesome player. I mean, Craig Button's got him like top 5, which is nuts to me. He's also got like Willander at 8. But hey, I like that NHL teams aren't necessarily too afraid of taking him, pretty high in the first round there. Oliver Moore is stud, very fun player. Probably the best skater of the draft, really fun playmaker, going to Minnesota, so that's going to be fun. Honzik, I actually thought would be higher. Stenberg, I'm surprised at 18, but Simashev, this is where we really got to talk about guys, or talk about defensemen in this draft. I know plenty of people, with good reason, despite the offense, or at least the numbers not jumping off the page at you, Simashev is their favorite defenseman in this draft, him or Reinbacher. So fascinating to see him down at 19. I don't really think, and I think we were talking about this last week or the week before on here, if he's going to go at 19, if he's, falling below some of these guys, I don't really have any worry. It's not, yes, he's Russian, but he doesn't have the same like risk factor as Michkov. He's not signed through 2026. He's kind of, it's just a different risk level for me. So there's not like the Russian factor with him. I think there's no worries about him really coming over. I don't think you're going to need to wait forever. And realistically, it's probably fine if you let him just go continue to develop in Russia. But this is a big dude. He's 6'4", he's 200 pounds. He plays fucking hard. He is one of the best skaters in the draft as well, despite being 6'4". He can turn on a dime. I've said it last week. I've watched him like just break ankles evading the forecheck, where he's just sending forecheckers into the boards head first. And, you know, there's no reason that the offense shouldn't pop, but even if it doesn't, because again, he's got really good habits in the offensive zone. He's shown, you know, between the tools and how smart he is and how like just his ability to fucking turn. It's unbelievable. But there's definitely more offense than that stat line shows. I mean, I think at one point he had like 1 point, like 20 MHL games, and like the MHL is a big time scoring league. So that like never should have been that low. But I've seen enough just from the way he plays and just like the tools he's got, the offense is in there. But at the very least, he seems like a safe bet to be a solid shutdown second line guy who can skate, who can break the puck out. So one of the best defensemen in this draft. So I am surprised that he's got him down at 19. Because again, I know my guy Jerome Berube's got him at, I think, at like 5th overall. So it's interesting to see him down at 19. I know there's a lot of debates about that guy, but I mean, again, you look at a kid that's 6'4", 200 pounds, who's high-end defense. He's got all the tools in the world, can skate as well as he does. I don't know how you don't take him higher than 19, but, you know, that'll be interesting to watch there. And then last one, Tom Willander. Again, you've heard me talk about him before. Another high-end, one of the better skating defenseman in this draft. He's got a right shot as well. He's got size when he wants to. He can be physical. And there's a little bit more offense than I think we've seen. You know, I think he proved a lot of people wrong, or at least he showed a lot of people that there is, you know, a decent ceiling offensively, and he's excellent defensively. He's headed to BU next year. So I am the one thing that's kind of disappointing is like he was the guy that I was hyping up that only a couple other people were. So now he's going to get all the coverage. So now I can't even take credit for anything. So that sucks for me. All right. So actually there's a couple guys I need to talk about in this first round, and then we can kind of just go find some players from Bobby Mack's first 3 rounds here that I'm like, how the fuck do you have them there? But since this is Minnesota Wild prospect related, let's go where he's got number 21. He's got Callum Ritchie, and what do you know? Callum Ritchie, he is a center. He is 6'2". He's 190 pounds. He had an off year this year, but so did quite literally everybody on Oshawa. But hey, this is like the exact mold of player that we've talked about on here, right? Like he's different than the other centers they've got in that pipeline. You know, I think this year it's interesting because there's a lot of people that had him top 10, you know, after the Holinka, that first junior tournament that really kind of sets the stage. It's like the kicking off of like a draft eligible season. But he's like, you know, he had this off year, and I know a lot of people soured on him. But I still believe in this kid. Like, not the greatest skater in the world, but he's a big dude. He's got two-way like potential. He's not there yet, but the shot is no joke. He's a legit playmaker. He's got high-end skill, and he can be pretty physical. So, Minnesota Wild. This is, I think when I first started talking about like targets early on, Callum Ritchie actually may have been the first guy that I brought up, just because, again, he's just different than the rest of the centers you have in the prospect pool. And that's a real nice piece to add. So I think he'll probably be gone by pick number 21. Just given the fact that he's, you know, probably a center, even if he's a right wing, doesn't really matter to me. But he's a 6'2". He's got a right shot, 190 pounds. That's got good offense and two-way capabilities, or at least two-way potential. The defense isn't there yet, but like he's got good enough habits that you think that should come as he continues to develop. You know, and every coach that he's ever had just raves about him, but so does every fucking kid that's going to go in the first round. All their coaches are like, oh yeah, he's the best. Really good kid. But you know, again, so he's like the exact mold of player that I think the Wild, I'm sure, would love to target. big center with size, projectable offense, 2A capability. It's right up their alley. So, I mean, I think they would love to take, depending on who's there. I bet that's a player that they would be thrilled to take at 21. And I think that would be a good choice. So there you go. And we'll see if Nate Danielson's there at 21, which he won't be. Another good choice. Another guy we've talked about before. But there you go. And then the guy that Joe Smith, they did the Athletic mock draft. They had each beat writer select for their team. He took Edward Shaw. That's so much fun. He is such a fun fucking player. Again, he's a big dude, high end skill, crazy hands, really good shot, popped at the Holinka. He's just, he's got an accusation that, he's not the most engaged player all the time, but when he does give a shit, when he does play, he is a fucking freak. He is like, the ceiling on him is crazy high. One of the higher ceilings of the draft class. It's just, you don't see it consistently at all times. And sometimes it just looks like he doesn't give a shit, but I would love that too. It's like kind of a risky pick just because you don't really know what that, like, every GM says you got to have an A game, you got to have a B game. I don't really know what the fuck Chalet's B game is, because it could be, it's terrifying. Like, I can't see him being like, yeah, I'll be happy to be on a fourth line. But if he hits, man, that's a no shit top six, high scoring player. And he's a ton of fun to watch. So, hey, I would be over the moon if they took him at 21. He's fun to watch, man. He's such a good player. Whew. All right. Last couple here in the first round that I just had to bring up. Theo Lindstein, to me, is a left shot D out of Sweden. Really good skater. He can break the puck out. I think he's good. He fit right in the SHL this season, even though Brinas, however you say it, got relegated. He's playing big minutes for them. He fit in fairly well. I just don't see what it is other than the fact that he's 6 foot and he skates really well. I think he's got the capability to, do certain things. Like, again, he's a really good skater. He moves right to left really well. It's not like he's like walking the line on the offensive zone and like creating shooting lanes, finding passing lanes. Like, to me, he really fits in. Like, if he's going to be a top 4 defenseman in the NHL, it's because he's kind of a passenger to whoever his partner is. So, I mean, I think for me, and I know that for our outlet, I think we put him at like 60 something or 70 something. It's just because, again, like, I don't really see a super high ceiling with him, but I mean, I think he's probably, he's a safe, decent enough player. So, but just interesting to see him there at 26 and Andrew Crystal at 27, who probably should be at least the top 15 pick. Again, you talk about like guys that don't have a B game. Andrew Crystal, if that kid gave a shit about playing defense, he'd be a slam dunk, but the skating's real fucking bad. He's 5'9.5", and doesn't play like the most projectable game, but like at the same time, he's just like better than everybody. So, that tends to not necessarily work out all that well in the NHL, but I have a feeling that he's going to make it because he is so good. But it's just, again, it's like mind blowing to see anyone put Theo Lindstein above Andrew Crystal, even though, we've all heard that Crystal has a chance to go late first, early second, but, in terms of just pure ceiling and talent, he's a top 12 pick for sure. So that's interesting to me. Oliver Bonk, depends who you ask, man. Depends who you ask. I do think he's going to end up going first round. I don't know if I would be thrilled about that. He is what he is, man. He's a big kid. He plays physical. He's hard to play against. He's got decent enough offense. He makes an okay first pass. And, he's got the NHL bloodline, Father Radek. He's a fine player. I'm not like, I know in our smart scouting outlet, they're all way lower on him than I would be. But like, to me, first round is a little bit rich. I just can't see a huge, super high upside with him, but who knows, man? Like, I've also talked to a lot of people who consider him a super well-rounded right shot defenseman. So I don't know. Again, you're looking at a right shot D with good size. He's physical. He's got the NHL bloodline. So automatically NHL teams are going to love him. But just interesting to see him, there with some of the other snubs. And I mean, the last pick, number 32, Riley Height, to me, 32 is way too low. Way too low. He's right up there. He's a real good playmaker in this draft. He's a ton of fun to watch. You know, he's not the biggest dude in the world, but he can make plays. He's got a crazy shot. He plays hard. He can be a bit of a hothead sometimes. I'm surprised to see him at 32 there. But yeah, there you go. So that's my takes on the first round there. Just jumping through, and then we'll just take questions and get the hell out of here. I did want to run through a couple other picks that he's got here, specifically guys that I think would be good fits for the Minnesota Wild, just because, you know, we should talk about the Wild a little bit more than we have. And a couple of guys he's got pretty high here in the second round. David Edstrom, I think he probably has a chance to go first round just because he really popped off at the U18s. Again, Swedish center, a no shit center. He's 6'3", 190 pounds. He can shoot the fucking puck, man. But he also showed two-way capability. He looks like a good, shutdown's probably a little bit strong, but a good defensive center with size. The skating's not superb, but he is fairly shifty, and he can he's pretty good in transition with the puck on his stick. He's fairly creative, but he gives you a little bit of everything in the offensive zone. So I wouldn't be shocked to see him go first round, honestly. But that's another guy that 6'3" center, right shot, creative player that has two-way capabilities. Another guy that the Minnesota Wild, I'm sure, are looking at. And, you know, especially if they want to move up in the second round here, I think that's a guy they'd love to take. He's got him at 37. So it's interesting because I've seen him be right around 50, either literally here at 35, 36, 37, or I've seen people be like, oh, he's going to go top 18. So it's just interesting to see where he goes. I mean, I think mid-second, the latest, we're going to see him go, just because, again, he's 6'3" center. But that's another guy that I love, and I think the Minnesota Wild love, I'm sure, as well. Anton Wahlberg, we all know how I feel about good old Anton. 6'4", 200 pounds, good skater, just so raw, but all the tools in the fucking world. He's got him at 40. I think that's probably realistic. I love that he's such a fun player to watch. He just goes fucking Sports Center top 10 mode constantly. One guy that's way too low for me here, and I think this is actually realistic, and obviously it is because Bobby Mack put him here. Man, Grayson Sachin at 49 is just a crime. I do think he's going to end up going right around there just because he's a center who was on a stacked Seattle team and playing 13, 14, 15 minutes a night. But Jesus, he still fucking produced right around a point per game. He plays hard. He's a good he just does everything really well. He projects to be a solid two-way player with good offense, but the fact that he's 5'10" is going to scare teams away, and he's 155 pounds. But 49, that's just a crime to me, man. That's so low. He's a stud. He deserves more love than he gets, but whatever. It is what it is. He should go in the first round for me all day long. My boy, Oscar Fisker-Molgaard at 51, I think that's probably realistic, but just the ascent with this kid, man. This is a guy who was literally playing junior hockey in Denmark up until 2 years ago. And then this year he ends up being, before the end of the year, he became HV71 second line center in the NSHL and playing unbelievably well. Not eye-popping stats, and his style of play is the most eye-popping in the world, but he's got some of the best hockey IQ in this draft as well. And he's a transition demon. He's such a good skater. He's going to be a solid NHL player, super reliable in all three zones. I think there's definitely room to grow for him offensively. He doesn't have an NHL level shot whatsoever, but he's going to be a really good NHL player for a long time, and a guy that you're just penciling in to be voted as one of the most underrated players in the league forever. He's a stud. He's so good. He's top 3 favorite players in the draft for me, so I get upset when I see him at 51. He should be in the first round all day. And the last couple I have to bring up because it's insane that they're this low. They're not, and he doesn't have in the first round. Jaden Perron at 58. It's only because he's 5'9". One of the most dynamic playmakers in this draft. He's going to have to overcome a lot to really hit his full potential in the NHL just because he is 5'9". He is 160 pounds. So it's going to it will be an uphill battle for him. But his kid is a human highlight, really. So fun to watch on a really good Chicago team in the USHL. 58, that's also criminal for me. That is fucking criminal. He is an absolute stud, man. an absolute stud. And same breath, because again, he's 5'8 3/4. William Whitelot, 65. Doesn't necessarily surprise me though, because like you want to talk about a defensive fucking black hole. William Whitelaw's your guy. But again, dynamic playmaker, high-end shot for a guy that size. All he does, though, is produce offense and just put up highlight reel fucking plays. So 2 guys that are literally only at 58 and 65 because they are 5'9" and 5'8" respectively. So really brutal. They should go way higher than that. Such good players, man. Such good players. Shout out my guy Felix Ungerstorm at 85, by the way. But let's see. Anyone else I really felt like I needed to bring up here? Well, yes, because another guy that I would have said was challenging for a potential first-round pick, even though he was 5'8", but even more so, a bigger reason I'm bringing him up, because these 3, 81, 82, and 83, the all-Italy sequence of this draft. Luca Pinelli at 81, center of the Ottawa 67, stud, real fun player to watch, but he's 5'8 3/4, so there you go. That's why he's there. Tristan Bertucci, defenseman out of Flint, big dude, plays hard. He's a good player. I think that'll be a nice little pickup for whoever gets him, probably 3rd round. I think he's a solid player. And then an actual Italian goalie, 6'6", playing for Färjestad in Sweden, Damian Clara. So there you go. They got the all Italy sequence in this fucking draft from Bobby Mack. But that's where we'll cut it for the draft. Now, holy shit, I actually did. I went through a whole hour by myself, and now we can just dive into the questions. So first, what I'll do here is go through the questions that were sent on Twitter. So like all 4 of them. All right, let me pull it up. All right. Oh my God, my computer froze. All right. Where are we? Bill, why does everybody in the league apparently hate playing and living in Calgary and Winnipeg? Hey, bro, we talked about it before. I don't know what's going on in Calgary. Winnipeg's kind of self-explanatory, even though I've heard Winnipeg's real cool. Yeah, those poor bastards, man. Those poor fans. It sucks. I don't know what's going on, specifically in Calgary. This is the first time I've seen everyone be like, yo, fuck this. Even after Daryl got gassed, I thought people would be like, oh, I'm excited. Like, I thought, like, some of these guys would be excited to play there again, but nope. So there you go. I have no idea, bro. Winnipeg probably just like it's cold, and there's like, I don't know, it's Winnipeg. Bill also asks, when the Minnesota Wild trade Calen Addison, do you think they make a run at Erik Johnson in free agency as a 3rd pair D-man? Sounds like he's not going to be back in Colorado. Yeah, that was just made public too. It sounds like they are not re-signing him. I don't know. I mean, I don't really know if Minnesota's really in the position to take a stab at or expend like any money. I think a guy like Erik Johnson, I'll be curious to see like what teams are willing to give up. I mean, the injury history is crazy, so that's another thing too. Like, they still have to, if they want to bring anyone in from outside Minnesota, if they want to like sign anyone in UFA, they still have to clear tons of money. And along with that, you look at Erik Johnson, and when he's healthy, he's a decent enough player, but he's just not healthy whatsoever. Like, how many games has he even played the last 3 years? So I can't see them doing that. And again, like, even if they wanted to, they don't necessarily have a whole lot of money to splash in free agency until, they actually make some moves here and like figure out what each of their own guys that are going to come back, what they're going to sign for. But I don't know. I think that mold of players, I'm sure someone that would be attractive to Bill Guerin to like kind of be steady Eddie on the back end, a big guy that plays physical. He's been around for a while. I'm sure that was like the idea in his head when he brought Goligoski in the fold here. But I can't really see it because, again, number one, they've got zero money to do anything. And 2, it's just, if you are going to spend money, I don't know how you can spend a significant amount or really any on a guy that's that injury ridden forever. All right. Lizard to Kaprizov says, Elias Lindholm, Mark Scheifele, or PLD, who would you want most and why? I would probably say, and unfortunately, I don't think any of these three is a realistic target for Minnesota because, again, money. But I think if you take your pick, and I'm not considering any rumors or any contract stuff, PLD for me all day long. He's super young still. He is only like grazed his potential. He's a big center, super creative playmaker. He can score goals. Defensively, he's solid enough, and there's room to grow there too. And he plays fucking hard. I think PLD for me would be by far the guy that I would take over Scheifele and Lindholm. As much as I love Lindholm, a big part has to do with the age thing. I'm not even considering the fact that you might only have him for a year. Even if that's the case, I don't give a fuck. I'd take that dude in a year. That's a number one center, no shit number one center, which we know you need to win in this league. And plus, he's young enough that, hey, if he loves it where he goes, maybe he won't even ask for that trade to Montreal, even though I'm sure that contract is already signed. Password is Whiskey asks, the 64th overall pick seems like a good place to take a swing. Who are some consensus third or fourth round guys with high upside that you think are worth taking a chance on? I mean, my guy, my number one favorite player in this draft that's not going to go in the first round, Felix Unger-Sorum. He's the reason he's not as highly thought of by a lot of people who do this. Is the skating's a big problem. He's undersized. He's 5'10", 5'11", but he's 160 pounds, soaking wet. Crazy high-end playmaking, though. Executed the most cross-seam passes, the most, one of the most premier playmakers in the J20 as a draft eligible this season for Lex Sands IF. He's a ton of fun to watch, man. And you know what? Like, even if he is undersized and he's not the best skater in the world, I think for me, like, he's shown some ability to create like just some crazy amounts of space with the puck on his stick because he's just so shifty. The skating's weird. It's not that he's like a bad skater, because I wouldn't say that's accurate. He's just not fast. Like, he does not have that good first step. But it's crazy. Like, in the J20 of the season, I watched him still. And I don't think he probably won't be able to do this in the NHL with the lack of foot speed, because that's a whole other level, obviously, than the Swedish U20. But he was still like getting in on the forecheck. And not only that, he would actually win the puck back and then make a play. The thing that I love most about him is the fact that every single time he touches the puck, he wants to make a play. I don't think I've ever watched that dude dump the fucking puck in. Sometimes it kills him. Sometimes it turns into him having like a minute and a half shift where he's just like do-si-doing around the offensive zone, just like waiting for something to open up. But he is so shifty, and his playmaking comes from his ability to create space for himself, create passing and shooting lanes, and execute. So, he also was on that top line with Stenberg and Edstrom at the U18s, and he was the best playmaker on that team. A team that took, USA to the ropes there. It looks like they may have actually pulled off that upset until USA decided that they were not going to let them do that. But he's my guy. Take a swing on fucking Felix Unger-Sorum, because there's legit upside there. And then let's see. Let me think of another guy. I'm going to pull up Bobby Max here. I like a kid like Denver Barkey too, man. Well, I guess he would drive everyone nuts because he's another center who's 5'8". Alex Chernik, probably another one. He's actually like kind of like a better skating Felix Unger-Sorum, a guy that a lot of people had in their first round. I think he'll be gone. Bobby Max got him mocked at 75th overall, but that's another guy with crazy high-end upside. It's literally him and Unger-Sorum who like execute some of the most or the highest rates of like cross lane playmaking, cross lane passes, cross seam passes. Like, that's what they both do. And Chernik's one of the better skaters in the draft too. So, if he's there in the third round, that's a nice solid pick right there. There are plenty of people that still have him first round too. So that's a guy I love there too. Let's find one more here. Emilio Arventi's interesting to me. Another Swedish kid who probably was like at the start of the year, I think a lot of people had him top 25 picks. Him and Jesse Nurmi too. two Finnish kids, scoring wingers. They're really fun to watch. Järventi's got some serious skill. Nervy's got good skill. He's a good shooter, and he's got a pretty good defensive game as well. So those are a couple other guys that, I think you're looking at third and fourth round. If they're sitting there, you bet on that upside all day long. So those are two Finnish kids that I like too, that probably will be there. Good question. I always loved, like, those are my favorite kind of picks to track in the draft, is like where some of these guys that you have personally watched for a while that maybe don't get the same like buzz as the top end guys. And when they do get taken, like, I fucking know, yep, great pick. So those are the guys that I would pick though, for that mold of player that you described. Moving on to the chat. I got to scroll up here. Let's see. Bill, as possibly the same Bill. Give me 3 of your top probable players that are going to be available for the Wild at 21. Which of the Swedes would you prefer, Stenberg or Edstrom? Oh, geez. Players that I think will be there at 21. Top 3. Well, good question. I'm going to start with the Stenberg or Edstrom comparison. You have to take Stenberg. Stenberg, is he smaller? Yes. But my God, is he a bulldog, though? He's got really high upside, too. I think, if he's a center on a third line, you're looking at a solid two-way player who's got high-end upside in terms of offense. Not a black hole defensive. And yes, he might be 5'10", but fuck, does he like to hit? He is a buzzsaw. So you got to bet on the upside with him. Again, like coming into the year, and by far one of the weirdest draft years ever, where like he goes and plays for Team Sweden against his peers. He kicks the shit out of everybody and like is just a stud everywhere he goes. And then, he's playing in like the Swedish U20 league and he's just like not standing out really at all. Getting out produced by guys in his own team that are either younger or the same age as him. So the league play versus, when he's playing with Team Sweden, it's just like mind blowing to me. It doesn't make any sense. So one of the weirder draft years ever, but he's a guy coming into this draft season that people at top 10, and plenty of people had him outside of their first round by the end of this year, by their final ranking. For me, he's still a first round pick. And I think you have to, especially in this draft, you got to bet on upside. So I take Stenberg before Edstrom, even though I do think Edstrom has probably like the higher floor just because he is the big center, projectable two-way game, budding offense, really, really fucking good shot, is able to create some decent high danger scoring chances at a good clip. So again, he's probably going to end up being, the higher floor in terms of like, hey, he's probably a safer pick to be like a full-time NHL guy. Like, hey, if you're not going to hit your full potential, are you still able to, find something else that makes you a good, useful NHL player? David Edstrom probably has a little bit more of that than like a Stenberg, but I still think Stenberg's floor isn't as low as other people say it is. Like, so I think for me, you got to take Stenberg with the upside. I think there's a pretty good chance he's actually sitting there for Minnesota. And again, it'll drive Minnesota fans nuts because he's not 6 foot tall. But he would be a great pick at 21. Same thing with Shala. I'll say the same thing about him. I'm curious to see if he's sitting there because I know a lot of teams or a lot of people really soured on him just thanks to his league play, which also was not great. But I mean, the proof's been put in there, man. Like, he's a stud. He is real good. He's so fun to watch. And then a guy like Sam Honzek or Nate Danielson or Callum Ritchie, those are the 3 guys that, like, I feel like one of them for some reason will be there at 21, whether they won't be. And that those will probably be my go-to picks. So those you go. So since fucking Bobby Mack put Ritchie there over Danielson and Honzek, or after Danielson and Honzek. So 3 guys realistic for number 21 overall. That I'd be very happy if they took Callum Ritchie, Edward Schale, and Otto Stenberg. Let's see. John Robinson. Is Oliver more realistically within reach for a trade up? Probably not. I mean, if teams let him slip, again, it's literally because he's not 6 feet. But I don't think that he'll fall far enough for a realistic like trade to happen. He's so good, man. So no, I would love that. Another player I'd love to take at 21 overall. He should not be there, and if he is, again, it's because he's 5'10". And then yeah, you're preaching the choir, bro. No Hall of Fame McGillney, unbelievable. I don't know what the hell this fucking guy has to. Well, I mean, he can't do anything else, I guess. But how is he not in yet? It's crazy. Charlie Smith, what are the odds we land the Russian prospect that wants to play with Kirill? Daniil Boot could be there at 21, and that would be another solid pick. A big boy, good shot, makes plays, can skate. Winger, but real good player. That's a fun player. I mean, if you're talking about Michkov, it's a 0% chance. At 21, is there a plug and play big scoring stud wing available for the first line? KK Rossi plus right wing pick. I mean, Bradley Nadeau, man. Holy shit. He's got some seriously high upside. He's going to go late first, early second. It would be a big swing at 21, but like there's no reason this kid doesn't score in the NHL. He's probably top 5 shot in the draft. We bet you Maine next year. He lit up the BCHL this season. What do you have? Like 45 goals in 50 games. That would be, I mean, he's a no shit sniper. Like he's a stud. I love that guy. And then last question, do you think a lot of teams that's not true. I got one more. Do you think a lot of teams overvalue size this season, given who was in the Cup final this year? Yeah, I think that's going to be very much so a thing, because finally all the fucking pundits in the world had the opportunity, like, oh, look at Vegas and their big defense. That's the reason that Adin Hill could be a Stanley Cup winning goalie. I mean, I like to think that people have the wherewithal to be like, yeah, they are big, but they also had a bunch of studs. Like they all move the puck fairly well, or very well to fairly well. And they had guys chipping in offensively too. So I would hope that, people have enough wherewithal to recognize that and not just like, oh, size. But we know it's the NHL, so probably. Sean Cosgrove, do any top players act like dickheads in their team interviews pre-draft to teams which they don't want to go to? Seems weird to interview for a job that you don't want. No, I don't think so. I mean, Michkov's literally like turning down interviews, which is incredible. Like, what a power move. But I can't imagine kids are doing that. Like, I think all these kids are smart enough to be like, no, I want to go play in the NHL. I mean, Brian Burke has a great story of like Thomas Vanek being a dickhead in his interview. And he's like, hey, like, stop being a dick. Like, if you know me, I will trade up to get you. Like, if I do like you, like, just because we're not picking where you think you're going to go. Like, you know what I mean? So that's a little bit different than people being a dude being a dickhead just because he's interviewing with a team he doesn't want to go to. But I think players are smart enough to be like, no, I just want to make the show. Because, I mean, that also gets out. Like, that's not something you can just hide from. But, I mean, I can't imagine that teams or kids do that. But I think that'll do it. I am late to the place I said I was going to go to an hour ago. Shocking. So eventually we figured it out. We figured out the live thing. I did a whole episode by myself. I didn't skip out. So I hope you're all proud of me. Thank you, everyone, for the questions. By this time next week, we'll know who the Wild drafted. If they traded up, if anyone, was traded for picks, we'll know. We'll find out. But thank you as always for tuning in. It's draft time, baby. It's draft time. Been waiting forever, and it's finally happening. We'll see you next week.